Good evening. My name is Sandra Craig, and I represent the Etiquette Foundation of Illinois. You are watching a live interactive call-in television program brought to you on CAN TV 21. Today, our topic of discussion will be Stop the Violence and Teach Etiquette. So please get on the phone, call your friends, call your family, call your neighbors, and tell them to tune in. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you want to say to us. Our phone number is 312-738-1060. And of course, I cannot do this show alone. I have my very special co-host, Mr. Nathan Wright.
Wow.
Welcome, Mr. Wright.
I am very pleased to be here with you again. We have an outstanding topic to talk about today, and it's always a pleasure to be your co-host.
It's always a pleasure to be your host.
Yes. Be the host, okay.
Okay, now let's just get started, Mr. Wright.
Okay.
Violence is at a record-breaking high in the city of Chicago. What can we do as parents and grandparents to do? What can we do to stop the violence? I know everybody's calling on the police and stuff like that, but I think there's something we as parents and grandparents can contribute to bringing this escalating crisis down.
Yes. Well, as you well know, our campaign for 2016 is Stop the Violence, Teach Etiquette. And so we're not only talking about parents, we're talking about mentors, mentees, teaching the other young people, stop the violence by teaching etiquette. What does teaching etiquette? What is the consequences of teaching etiquette? We are a society based on education. We have schools set up from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Yes.
That's what we call a free education. And so teaching a subject that can reduce violence in our city, especially over the summer. This is our summer campaign. Stop the violence, teach etiquette. And of course, if you take that at heart, we well know that all behavior is learned behavior.
Yes.
That violence is learned behavior. And it's the same, it's no different from learning to read or write. The only difference is that you're learning to read and write in a school setting. But before there were schools, your parents, your mother was your teacher.
Yes.
Or your father was your teacher before we had public schools. And it wasn't that long ago that we did not have the traditional schools. And of course the church was part of that process, and many churches set up schools. And so that the community can come together and have one teacher teach a subject such as math or reading. And so education is critical to who we are today. We are an educated people. So if there's a problem that needs resolving or needs to be addressed, then what do? We educate
Yes.
our children, our values, the things that really are important to them for them to learn.
Right.
And so being against violence is something you can teach. You can educate those values so that our children will be least likely to commit a criminal act or a violent act. And that's what's really missing in our educational system.
I agree, because
Yes.
I was thinking just the other day, and I thought this before, that if Johnny is in school and Johnny is intelligent and he can read and write, but Johnny doesn't know how to behave, he's not going to be able to get the information and apply it because he has a social problem.
Yes.
No social skills. So I do think this should be one of the first things that is taught to our children. There was a time it was taught at home, but we know things are different today.
Yes.
There's one-parent households, and then somebody's got to work. So a lot of these things that we used to have are not in place anymore, and that's where the community takes up the slack.
Yes.
Okay. I think we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Good evening, Ms. Craig, and good evening, Mr. Wright.
Good evening.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. I've got a unique perspective on this whole thing, and it goes back 40 years. Now, first of all, in the city of Chicago, it's only 6 or 7 geographic areas where there's violence occurring. Is that fair to say?
Well, it's
from the south and the west sides.
well, it's also spreading all over the city.
Yeah,
People being
that's my
robbed
point.
up north in Bucktown, and
That's
stores
my
being
point.
broken into. So it is spreading throughout the metropolitan area.
It is, because violence is a social health problem, and just like now they're talking about the heroin epidemic. It's been a heroin epidemic in the black community since the 1950s. Okay, so now they're arming the police with Suboxone and things like that to treat heroin affected white kids. Now, but the thing is this: it's about 6 or 7 areas where all of the shooting is occurring. They've had 40 years to control 6 or 7 areas on the south and the west side, and they haven't done it.
No.
Now, for the last 20 years, we have been saying, Mayor Daley started saying this, it all begins in the home. It all begins in the home. Everyone in power is trying to avoid the issue, but they're all doing the same thing. They've been doing the same thing for decades. They're not, and Einstein said, if you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, you're insane.
Right.
Now, people are getting murdered, going to buy coffee, driving in their cars. We have to have outside intervention from the federal government come in to make the streets safe first and foremost. But we have to do something different, and they're not doing anything different. And lastly, speaking to your point, Mr. Wright, the violence in the south and the west sides, it's a social health problem that's now creeping out into the larger community. They're shooting people on the expressways now. They're driving cars into stores. So all I'm saying is this: because they have neglected the south and the west sides for so long, they're now being impacted by the violence that's occurring, because now it's spread out everywhere you go. And the fact of the matter is this: we have to call upon the federal government. We need a class action lawsuit, because we're literally getting murdered. Even in our homes, bullets are flying through the walls, killing people.
Yeah.
So, I just want to thank you for giving me a few minutes to vent this, and I appreciate everything you're saying and everything that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Very good call. He covered quite a few very important points about what hasn't happened in this city, and certainly I've been around long enough to know that there's been a lot of talk, but no action, no real substantive action. It's an educational problem. This is the position that we're taking. Manners are important. When you teach a child how to be courteous, it's amazing the different personality you get when a child understands just being courteous, being polite, having good manners, knowing to say thank you and you're welcome and a good afternoon or good morning to another person. When a child has that state of mind, those values translate into behavior, and that's positive behavior.
Yes.
The child who committed the unfortunate act of stabbing another child to death, that child had been educated to do that. That's behavior. And we have to recognize that, and we need to move towards educating the next generation of our young people so that won't be 10 years from now. And those who've been around, like the gentleman just called, I go back to Ben Willis. I know if those who've been around 30 years remember that young man who was shot to death. You can go on YouTube and see a photograph of him. And so this has been going on for the last 40 years. And it's going to be going on another 10 or 15 years if we don't intercede to do something about it. Education is the key.
Yes.
Yes.
Because our children are not dying because they can't read or write or do biology or science. They're dying because they lack behavioral training.
Yes.
They lack social skills training. And that's how this violence can come down if we educate.
Yes.
Everything else has not worked, and me and Mr. Wright was just talking the other day. Well, actually, it was yesterday. And I was asking him, have you met anybody that is serious about really wanting to do something to stop the violence? I said, maybe before I met you and came on board, you did. I said, but I've not met anybody. And I've been all over this city that is really serious about stopping this violence. And it's getting worse. And Mr. Wright told me, unfortunately, Sandra, I've not met anybody either.
No.
So it's past time. We're in a crisis.
Yes.
There's terrorism right here in the city of Chicago. We're sending money abroad to help people that are having problems in their countries. Well, there's a problem in this country. There's a problem in this city. And there's problems in our communities that need to be addressed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Caller, you're on the air.
My comment is, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My comment is this: it's very true about the etiquette part and teaching kids to say thank you and things like that. But you have to also look at the parents. You have a lot of these parents that are young, that have no training whatsoever themselves. If you try to chastise their kids, you have to fight them. I have no problem telling a young man to pull his pants up, and most times young men take my advice, without getting smart. But you have some kids out here as young as 7 and 8 years old that will stand their ground, look at you and curse, and they get that from home. So I don't have a problem teaching my children how to say please and thank you, but that's just me. It's the same thing with us as black folks not getting out and vote. You can't complain about what's going on in this world if you don't participate in it and try to make an effort to make things right. We can march till the cows come home and beg for the government to help us do this, but there was a time when black folks coming from being slaves stood up and did things for themselves. We need to stop looking for somebody else to rescue us. We need to rescue ourselves. It starts with us. But like I said, you have so many parents nowadays, be it a single family, home or whatever, who have no kind of training, and they can't train their kids. So these people know who's out here doing all this shooting, and I cannot believe all this shooting is just by gangbangers. It's just too many people getting shot, and nobody sees nobody can recognize nobody. That don't make sense to me.
Well,
On the expressways, on the streets, this is crazy. And it's not once a week. It's every single day somebody's getting shot, and nobody can identify anybody. Something's wrong with that.
well,
Thank you.
we're not in disagreement with your comments. In fact, we could say the same thing, and it would be just as truthful what you said that it is for me to say it, for you to say it. We do address the issue regarding parents. We have a parent etiquette program. It is very, very comprehensive. And I wish you can come and sit in on some of our parent training programs. We go to the schools, the parents who are in the parent program at the public schools. We go there. Miss Craig just did a 2 or 3 hour workshop, and the parents was crying and hugging her because they are now realizing their errors, their lack of training, their lack of understanding of how to raise their children. And I agree, yes, it's a parental problem. The new superintendent was just talking about that whole issue. Parents need to step up, but they need to be educated. I mean, you can say that to them, but it's a value system. And if you don't have those values, it's very hard to be able to act out so that your child can see this kind of behavior. Not just tell the child to do this or do that, but the child has to see you role play. They have to see that behavior in you, and parents want to learn it. And Ms. Craig can attest to her training of parents in the schools, and it's very effective. The only problem is they won't invest any money in us doing that. They won't expand our program. We've offered to give our program to the public schools. They don't even want it as a gift. And so we're up against a very, very difficult system. And unfortunately, the only thing we can do is advocate for what we do. Teach etiquette. Yes.
Right. And right now, because I was on the west side of Chicago just last Friday, and I taught a 4-hour workshop, and I was letting the parents know that you're your child's role model, your home is their first school, and you're their first teacher. I said, so what you put in, you will get out. Now, they're going to interact with other children who may not have the same value system in their home, but because you've put the work in, because you've done your part, because you have been the role model, then it'll work out for you in the end. But first of all, parents must get back to parenting and not being children. And unfortunately, we have younger parents today, and they do need training because they didn't receive it in their house. Some of the parents I taught told me that they didn't have social skill training in their home. No, mama was working because she had to, and they were basically raising themselves. So you know what happens when we leave our children to themselves. So we all have to help out, not just the ones that we birthed, but all of these children are ours. And I'm so tired of seeing them dying in the street. I can hardly watch the news because it's just that tragic. And that brings me to this point. Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Why do you think our children are killing each other?
Because they have been educated to be accepting of violence. They have been desensitized to violence. If you turn on the TV this evening, you may see 3 or 4 homicides on TV between now and 10 o'clock or more. And then the theaters is just full of violence.
Yes.
And so if you raise a child in an environment where violence has been accepted as entertainment, then what do you say about desensitizing them to respect human life? It doesn't have any value. And so if they don't have a value system that's consistent with morals meaning ethics, morals meaning integrity, morals meaning having good character, morals meaning respecting the dignity of life. And if you have those kind of moral values, then you're least likely to pick up a gun and do some harm to someone else. It's just not in you to do that. But if you give a child week in and week out of violence, you're going to end up with a violent person because they're not going to have any respect for human life. And then you add on top of it the drugs that's out here today. They're lacing these drugs with some kind of chemicals. These young people are going crazy. You know, they just, it's unbelievable. I hope the government is testing these drugs to see if this is contributing to the level of violence in our community. You know, it's something is awfully out of whack with our young people and the shooting and killings that we see every day.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, caller, you on the air?
Yeah, hi. I was just mesmerized by the words you were saying, Mr. Wright. They were so apropos. But let's take a broader perspective. And in terms of the movies and the violence and the things and all of that being input in our children's head, that's happening all across America. And tens of millions of people don't live like we're living here in Chicago. So it can't really be that. What it really is we have a subculture here in Chicago that's completely different than anywhere else. When you mentioned earlier about the girl stabbing the other girl that was in the news, do you know her mother gave her the knife?
Oh yes, we know the details.
We know the details.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is the kids can go and they can receive all of the training that we can give them in the schools, but then they'll go home to a subculture where violence is promoted, where they're expected to behave in that norm, and that's how between now and Tuesday morning, 40 to 50 people are going to be shot.
Yes.
10 to 12 will be killed.
Yes.
So if we don't get some outside intervention to come in these small 6 or 7 areas, just drive up and down the street, stop cars, and get weapons that the people are carrying in the cars. Until we don't make the streets safe and do something different, nothing's going to change. But again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to say this, and I definitely respect everything, both you, Mr. Wright, and you, Ms. Craig.
Yes.
I respect everything you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To his comment, and thank you again for calling, about the National Guards, we would have to have the military in here for at least 10 years in order to have a real impact on the behavior, where people understand that they are not going to be able to continue to behave in this fashion. And they're going to just simply drive them out of the area. They're going to be doing that in some other part of Chicago or the suburbs. As you well know, they're out in the suburbs. Now, it's not very safe out there, where 10, 15 years ago, people were fleeing the city, going to the suburbs, believing that it was safer. And they're finding out that it's just as dangerous out there as it is in the city of Chicago.
Caller, you on the air?
Yes, good evening. How y'all guys doing? And before I start, let me wish everyone a wonderful holiday coming. Please be safe And anyone who have served, thank you for making it safe for us. Listen, I've been listening to everybody. I remember as when I was young, the community knew me. They knew all of us kids. If someone did something, trust me, before you got home, your parents would have known what had happened. Let me tell you, if people are scared, it's better in numbers if people are scared. Get together. The scared ones get together and talk to each other. Form a block club. But you cannot tell me you don't know that Chuck Nuck is on the corner doing something and nobody don't know anything. Listen, the parents, if the parents don't want to cooperate, but that's okay. You don't have to go through that. That's why you have organizations you can get in contact. Go to those CAPS and you let people know what's going on. But let me tell you, you keep on being scared, hiding behind your blinds, and seeing things happening. You know something happening. Don't say nothing when something happened to one of yours. Don't say anything if a flood comes through your house. You gotta speak up. Listen, I think y'all guys are wonderful, and I know it's almost time to get out. But again, especially y'all too, be safe. Have a wonderful holiday, and bring us some little ribs on. Let me get out there so I can hear you, your response.
Thank you.
And Steve, I do agree. I come along when we did have block clubs, and people were organized in the community, and that was a very effective system that we had back in that time. We would have an annual block party, and the streets would be blocked off, and we would have hot dogs, and everyone would have a good time. They would play music, and it would be a fun day for that club, that block club. And yes, the mayor could, resuscitate those kinds of values. It doesn't take a whole community, but you just need the majority of the people. If the majority of the parents on that block were about etiquette and had etiquette meetings. You remember there were days that parents had tea meetings. The parents meet for tea, and they would discuss issues in the community and the things that were of concern to them. We need to get back to that kind of system. That was a great system, and it was quite effective. But you're right. The last 15, 20 years we've moved away from, and the TV's been raising our children. With the breakdown of the family where you don't have fathers and mothers raising their children, then you're going to have the parents allowing the television to raise their children. And if you look at cartoons today, it's violence in cartoons. Go turn the TV on Saturday morning and look at the cartoons and see the level of violence that's in that. So what are they teaching our children? It's not all about the dollar. Everybody making money on violence, but it's not about that. It's about being civilized. Yes.
Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Wright. I would like to make a plea to the callers and the viewers, even those that didn't call in. They believe that this is going to be the most violent weekend of this year because it's the Memorial Day holiday and it's a long holiday. I ask that each viewer, each caller, each parent, each grandparent, do what you can do to stop the violence, to watch the children, to break up anything that looks like it's going to escalate. We all play a part, and let's do our part. I ask that for you this weekend. And I want to say thank you to my very special co-host, Mr. Nathan Wright. I thank you for all the viewers and callers that called in, and hopefully you'll be back with us next week. We'll have another great show for you. Have a safe weekend. God bless you all, and thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk Etiquette. Good night.
Good night.